Today we have a special guest. You're going to love her, Monique Renee. She is a transformational leadership coach and a fellow podcast host. Fierce and Flowing is her podcast. She helps leaders liberate themselves from all this stress and doubts that we all tend to fall into sometimes and live the path of their soul, live in alignment. This is what she's about, and this is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So, welcome, Monique.
Thank you, Eugenia. I'm so excited to be on your podcast and to share with your community, with your viewers, and I was so grateful to have you on my podcast as well. It was such an honor. So
Oh,
thrilled.
it's such a good thing to do this swap because then both of our audiences get to know about
Yes,
all this wonderful stuff we
absolutely.
talk about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's start by looking into like how did you ended up weaving together so many modalities? Because I think this is one of the things that so many entrepreneurs fall into is that they have many interests and
Yeah.
then they trying to figure out like, do I stick to one interest? This is what I build my business on. Can I have, more than one? What about like some very creative people like you and I? Like I have probably
Yes.
20 interests that are all sort of in there. So my
Yeah.
approach to that was to weave them together into one business, and then it became the soul design through which I teach. Everything that I do with my clients sort of involves all these other things, but in my marketing, I don't mention a lot of the details of how I do it unless
Right.
they're in my world, and then they find out like, oh my God, you read Akashic records. Oh my God, you
Right.
do this. Oh my God, you do that. So same thing, I'm sure with you, but with you also a lot of things I've seen that you do mention, like you go from what feng shui, right? Like you do
Yes.
something in that direction. You have astrology, you have tarot, you have like coaching and leadership. You have it all somehow woven together. So speak
Yeah.
about that because I think that that's not just from the standpoint that you yourself were able to do that, but
Right.
how did you decide what goes forward to your marketing, let's say, for people to be aware
Yes.
of, and what kind of becomes in the end once they already sign up and working with you?
Right. Great question. And I think I'm still getting better at it. Let's be honest, right? What I have learned along my journey and by diving deeply into who I am and really understanding who I am, what I'm here to do, what my gifts are, and following those gifts, I've learned to honor the fact that I am here to be a creative, to be a creator, to tune in to what my soul is asking me to learn and to teach and walk that path. It's so interesting, Eugenia, because I end up getting a lot of clients that have been where I have been, and I'm sure it's the same for you. And part of my journey was that I was excited about so many different things. And along my path, so I started my career in I started my career in dancing. I was a lifelong dancer, wanted to take that trajectory, and then a piece of that life kind of spoke to me and said, that's not the career you want, so leave it as a passion, move on to the next big thing. I ended up um, starting my career in public relations and marketing, and I loved it. I had a career in PR and marketing for 10 years, but what happened is that along the way, since I was a child, I felt like spirit was talking to me, and telling me, showing me the things that I was meant to learn along the way. And the things that showed up along the way, even as a child, were consciousness, learning about energy and consciousness, um, feng shui. I taught myself early on how to be a feng shui practitioner with just books. Same thing with astrology. So I always paid attention to these little urges and became a practitioner of them, but never really put them out into the world. And what happens to a lot of us, kind of midway through our career, we're like, this has been great, but I feel like there's a bigger calling for me. I feel like I need to go deeper and really help people with these tools. And so little by little, I became not just a self learner, but I got certified in these practices, became a practitioner in all of them. And I started to merge my two worlds together. And so my PR and marketing became an opening for me to do this other work. I started working with educators and teaching them about spirituality. I became an energy leadership coach and started teaching at the university and bringing in all of these tools. And little by little, I started to find that there was really a synergy among the tools, and that if I kept them secret and didn't share them, the right people wouldn't find me. And so it took a little bit of boldness to begin talking about these tools that I kind of left in my secret little spiritual closet for a very long time. And part of my, I would say, my shadow energy whispered to me, you shouldn't talk about that stuff. People are used to seeing you this way. And, but my heart and soul said, talk about it, because the people who are meant to work with you, that's the only way that they're going to find you. And the ones that don't believe in it, that's okay. They have someone else out there that could be their coach, that could be their practitioner. Also, something that you will recognize is I became a human design practitioner because having my own human design reading was so powerful. And I learned to embrace the fact that I'm a manifesting generator and I'm not here to do just one thing. I'm here to do many little things. And I think what I've learned is that the key is to do them in periods of time. You know, one period, I'm going to focus on launching something around feng shui. Maybe the next quarter, I'm going to focus on launching a product around our astrology and how our astrology can guide our purpose and our flow. And that's how I do it, so that as an entrepreneur and as a marketer, I'm very focused, but I still get to do everything that I love and everything that I'm great at.
Yeah, and I think it takes a lot of courage to be able to focus on something, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable. And I know that for my audience, this is quite often a question that, like, let's say they want to step more into the leadership of their coaching, and
Yeah.
energy healing is woven into it. Meanwhile, they have, of course, other components, other certifications, whatever it is that they studied. And
Right.
the purpose of good message is to attract the ones we want and repel the ones we don't. So the more we
Exactly.
talk about what we actually do, the easier the attraction becomes, right? Because energetically
Absolutely.
we are in the flow of that. But I think that what you're talking about specifically, like picking one thing that becomes the forward thing, while
Yes.
the other components still there, you don't have to say like, oh, now I don't do energy healing or I don't read tarot cards.
Right.
Or
Yes.
suddenly my psychic abilities turned off because right now I'm doing this other thing. It's like, no,
Yeah.
all of this does exist and it has place probably in your message. And I think it should have place in like message of somebody who is multifaceted like that. So all of this requires a lot of charge,
Yeah.
and charge from like personal confidence, certainty, energy of the universe. So what is your unique pathway that you have figured out to harness the universal energy in order
Yeah.
to have that charge? Because that's one of the things I see a lot of times, that people kind of run out of charge. Like they have all
Yeah.
these ideas, and then they fizzle out as soon as they face like, oh, now I actually have to do it.
Yes. Yes. For me, I've had to really learn I could live in the spiritual 24/7 and not embrace this practical 3D world. But the reality is that if we're going to be successful entrepreneurs, we have to live both worlds, right? We have to have one foot in the 3D practical and another in the spirit world, to be open channels, right? For our guidance. What has really helped me is paying attention and following my own process that I use with my clients, right? So the first step of what I call my fiercely flowing process is clarity, right? Reminding myself of who I am, what I'm here to do, what ignites me, what my gifts are. If we don't know our own gifts, and if we don't know what lights us up, those things that we could spend hours doing, and at the end of the day, we still have energy to give and still have service to provide the world. If we don't know what those are, we're going to be kind of lost, right? So being really clear about who I am and what my mission is, I tap into that every single day, number one. Number two, clearing my energy. And part of clearing my energy is my morning practice. I'm very dedicated to my morning practice, which includes energizing my body through walking out in nature, I speak to nature when I walk. Often get my downloads in nature. So that's a way that I tune in. Yoga, working my body, working energy through my body, and then sitting in meditation. More and more, I receive messages and guidance through my meditations, and it's so much fun. I'm the kind of woman who walks through life waiting for the signs to show up. And I just kind of have fun with spirit that way. I'm like, oh my gosh, did you just really say that to me? Okay. And you said it through a bird, or you said it through a feather, or whatever. I receive my energy through spirit and through my body. And so I make time for that practice, for that connection. Okay. So clarity, connection, clearing my energy, and then consistent daily focus and effort. And that's where the business side comes in for me, where it's okay, I'm clear on who I am, I'm clear on what the universe wants me to do and what I should be focusing on. And as an astrologer, I look at my astrology every day and I remind myself of what those big lessons are, where I need to push. And that also helps me to decide what I'm consistent with every day. But it's really about, again, day to day, focusing. This is where my effort's going to be. This is where my energy is going to be. And unless I'm guided to do something different, that's where my stick-to-itiveness is.
Yeah, and you're
So,
such a good example of weaving together the flow part when you kind of like waiting for sign to appear and
yes,
intuitively responding to that, and actual marketing and following through on the business side. So
exactly.
that's that combination is like this is what I teach as well. I'm sure this is what you teach your students, your clients, because this is to me is like the ultimate feminine harmonious way to run a business.
Yes, it's the combination of feminine and masculine, right?
Right.
And for so long, I was burned out. I um, got into leadership because I recognized that I was not leading my life as the CEO of my life. I didn't have to be a business owner. I just needed to recognize that in order for me to be in leadership consciously, I needed to act like the CEO of my life. And that meant figuring out why I was lost, why I wasn't clear, why I wasn't energized, and getting the help that I needed, and figuring out how to also do that for myself. And part of what I got lost in was the masculinity of business.
Mhm.
Going, not listening to my heart, not listening to my soul, exhausting yourself with the things that you think you need to do because everyone else is doing it, or because all these people have certain expectations of you, which are not the expectations that you have of yourself, and letting others be the CEO of your life. And I had to stop doing that. And that was like a brutal awakening for me. That was really the beginning where I started to take full responsibility for my leadership and start to merge my two worlds together.
Yeah, and that whole balancing part of knowing where to go for something and where, even though it's part of the plan, it might not be the right timing. That's the part I
Yes.
think that, like you mentioned there a couple of times, different versions of that. That I think is so difficult for people to catch because we either get into this, like, okay, this is what I'm deciding, I'm gonna do it. And then, like, we go kind of ignoring the flow. Or
Yeah.
I see the other extreme, like, I'm just going to sit and wait. And then somehow I will just know the right thing. And, you can run a business like that either.
No.
So putting the two together and knowing where that point is to navigate the right timing. Is this where you would use the tools like astrology or human design or feng shui, or just
Yes.
tuning into the universe? Like my ways, I just open up and receive, but I
Right.
also have to work on maintaining openness because otherwise I can just
Absolutely.
be the train that goes on the tracks. So maintaining openness allows me to find a timing. What's your way of doing that
Yeah.
you can advise the audience here?
My favorite ways, and that's why I created one of the tools that I did, which is called the Flow Roadmap. I use two forms of astrology, and I use them for different reasons. Um, Traditional astrology, I pay attention to what my planets are doing and what the lesson is. And that guides me on timing. When's the right timing to do something? When isn't the right timing to do something? So the astrology really does help me day to day. I would consider myself a predictive astrologer. So I look for those predictions for myself and for others to help them make decisions. And just to remind ourselves what our gifts are and what we're here to do, because a lot of times that's where the lack of clarity is. I don't know what my purpose is. Well, let's help you figure that out. And then the feng shui astrology is beautiful because what I do with my flow roadmap, I ended up creating this for my clients because they were kind of asking for it. And I said, this is the perfect tool. It's a one-page dashboard. Every single year, we have an energy, a specific energy that is guiding us for our growth, for our learning, and it's reminding us how we need to flow that year. So self-care is a big part of it. How do we find balance that year? And so I give them that information. Remember that this is your growth year, or this is your spotlight year, or this is your cocoon year. Every year is very different. It has different lessons. And then every single month, we also have an energy that we're working with. And this is aligned with the 5 elements in nature. And so by using this flow roadmap, it takes away the technicality of astrology that can be very confusing. And all you got to do is follow the flow roadmap. And it helps us to strategize in a way that prioritizes our mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being, and allows us to be super focused with our energy and not do everything for everybody all the time, which is what gets us into those cycles of overwhelm. So those are the 2 tools primarily that I use on a daily basis for myself religiously. Here's my flow roadmap. and also for the clients who work with me.
Yeah, and I think this is such a good point to understand that sometimes it's actually the time to go in. And if we are too much in the masculine energy of goal setting and then following through on the goal, we might ignore the going in part or
Yes,
assume that somehow, oh, because another extreme, if it's the time to go in, that means the goal is I don't go there. And like the
correct.
way I've been doing it is kind of weaving them is like I can still go towards whatever my vision is, but my energy can be more inward while I do this versus outward, depending on the polarity I'm in at the time. So, can you speak a little
Absolutely.
bit more on that? Because that's an intentional use of one's conscious awareness, let's just say.
Yeah, I'll give you a specific example. I have a client right now who was in a career for like 27 years. This was her life. She loved it. But sometimes when we work for big corporations, there's, layoffs, and she was laid off. And now she's had to reinvent who she is, and she is in a dream year. A dream year is the beginning of a new cycle. Except a lot of people think that when it's the beginning of a new cycle, we have to get going. We have to know our plan. We have to put it into action and just start, marketing and selling. And no, 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 no. A dream year is about dreaming. It's about being the essence of water. Water flows. Water is creative. Water is very relaxed and is very reflective, right? So I teach my clients how to be the element. And this gave her permission to take the pedal off the metal and give herself a year to really recognize herself again, right? Dream the dream. Who do I want to be? What is my vision? What kind of work do I want to do now? Reinvent herself and also allow herself to be creative, right? Do some artwork, do fun things that you haven't done. That's what the dream year is about. However, you tell a very go-getter type A personality person to just dream the whole year, they're going to be like, are you crazy? Right? So that's where in the flow roadmap, we have the different months, right? So I say, pay attention to the overarching energy. That's the most important thing, is for you to honor the dreamer in you this year. However, there is a spotlight year, a spotlight month. That month is more fire. So I'm going to ask you to be fiery. I'm going to ask you to put yourself out there in the world. Go socialize, go meet people, go network, go talk about who you are. If you already kind of know what direction you're going to go in, try to sell something, right? That's where we can bring in that other energy to balance us, right? Or maybe it's a rise month. A rise month is the element of wood. It's all about being the warrior, right? So it's the go get it month. And that's the month I'm telling her, this is a good month to actually test something out, right? Go for something. See how it feels. See who shows up in your life. See if that ignites a new dream for you in your dream year. So this is how we work the energy. And then it's also about self-care, right? So during a Rise month, you can burn some energy. Go do some intense workouts. Your body wants it. During a cocoon month, you want to be slow and steady and grounded and just be outside in nature. Nurture yourself with warming sweet foods. So, it's just a beautiful science that really allows us to understand the concept of flow and how it's unique to us as individuals. And we get to do a little bit of all the energies.
Yeah, and those are all really good examples, I think, for people to understand that you can still have a vision while you are defining it. Like it's
Yes,
not finalized. You can have an overall direction and then go in that direction and then be redirected towards even better direction. And you can
exactly.
trust that there's a bigger plan than whatever you might have put in your head.
Exactly. And for me, that's the connection part. To your
Right.
point, we're connected and we're really feeling our gut, right? Especially as manifesting generators,
Yeah.
we're paying attention to our gut, to what is the yes and what is the no, right? And then the guidance. So I always do this and I've had many moments where I've wanted to launch something and I've taken all of the steps to launch it, but something in my gut is telling me it may not work the way you want it to. I will still push forward, but at some point I may get a sign that says stop pushing. It's not the right time. Wait a while, go do this instead, and then relaunch it a little bit later, right? So it does take practice to trust yourself, and it does take practice to trust and surrender to the divine, knowing that things will happen in divine timing. And we do have to be patient because timing for spirit and timing for us are completely different.
Right. We're linear time. It is not.
Yeah, like I really wanted to leave my um let's call it corporate job that I was in for 17 years. I actually wanted to transition out of it a lot earlier than I did, but it just wasn't the right time. It actually took me 10 years to exit and become an entrepreneur. And I'm glad that it worked out that way because the connections that I built, the experience that I built, all of the learning and the tools that I created and that I've been teaching to others then put me in a space of expertise that I didn't have early on. So it wouldn't have been the same experience if I had started my business 10 years earlier. It had to happen when it happened.
Yeah, and all of that requires trust of yourself. So you have to
Yeah.
know your superpowers, like the thing you were just talking about earlier, that this is, I really want to stress for all of you who's listening, is that you got to claim whatever it is that you have within you, whatever your superpower is, even if you think it might be weird or whatever, maybe you just like magically holding space for people and they, feel better in your presence. That's a superpower.
Yes.
Own it. Like whatever the
Yes.
thing is, you have to own it. And then the next part is to what Monique said is to stay open to trust the universal timing because we do not always know what the right time is. Like I'm like you, I can start on a project because it makes sense. Mentally, I start something in that direction, maybe write some emails, maybe write copy for the page, and then it kind of like doesn't go anywhere. Like now I have
Right.
to really push if I am to make it. So I learned to listen to that, like, oh, universal energy was carrying me, and now my own would be like the universal
Exactly.
ended. Now I will be pushing. And that means it's not the right time. That's where
Right.
I just put it on ice for a while and go do something else. And then the same thing comes up, maybe with a different title. Maybe it was just like to be 2 months later. So it's not always discarded. It's just
Right.
timing. We all need to know where that is. So for
Yes.
you, those techniques that you just mentioned, I think this is really beneficial for people to understand that timing doesn't mean the end of the project, let's start something new. It just means sometimes not the right time now.
Yeah. And I learned the hard way. I think many of us, what we teach now, we learned it. And I learned that we have to tune into our thoughts, our emotions. And when I am pushing things because I have to, or it's coming from a place of fear, or desperation, or, if I don't do this, I'm not going to be successful.
Yeah, the panicky
It
thing.
is not the right time. You're not in the right energetic framework for whatever it is that you're doing to be successful, right? And that's a hard lesson that I learned many times. And so I do preach flow. And part of my flow is to understand that if I don't have the energy for something right now, or it's the wrong energy, then I'm gonna stop, and I'm just gonna sit, regather my energy, get back to the best energetic place I can be, and then start from there.
Yeah, and to all of you who just heard that and thought, well, but I'm exhausted all the time, so does it mean it's not the right time to do my business? No, that means it's the right time to dig in as to why you are exhausted all the time, because nobody's exhausted all the time. Our preset is that we have universal energy, right?
Correct, correct. And when we're doing the right things at the right time with the right mindset, all we're doing is building universal energy. We're in that place where we're so excited to live, so excited to work, so excited to get out in the world and share our magic, that it's just exhilarating and it's addicting, right? So we do have to pay attention to, we should not be exhausted. We should not be exhausted. If we're exhausted, we're getting sick. And as entrepreneurs, we have to make sure we don't get sick, because we're here to serve. So one of the things that I also learned, which is very 3D, very practical, is just productivity. You know, one thing at a time, one thing at a time. What is the one thing that I need to do today that's the best use of my time? And if I only do that one thing and I do it really, really well, and I'm proud of it, that's all I need to do today. I don't need to do 20 things. I don't need to work until 10 o'clock at night, right? And this is where a lot of people say, well, I don't have balance. Well, you don't have balance because you're not creating the balance intentionally. And this is where I get tough with my clients, right? You have to look in the mirror, right? Sometimes we create the chaos for ourselves. No one
Right.
else
And
is
a
doing
lot of
it
it
to us.
comes from that desperation and panicky feeling you mentioned earlier, because then they think like, yeah, but it all has to get done in order for me to. And I'm sure
Right,
you say the same thing to your people. Like if you have this if then
right.
belief, then you're already not running in the universal energy. And one thing I would add to that is if someone is exhausted all the time, you have two things to check. One is physical, like are your hormones off? Like is there something there that
Yes.
you low on iron,
Yeah,
and you just need to take supplements? Just go do blood tests, go check it out and fix that if that's the problem. But most of
absolutely.
the time, that is not the problem. Most of the time, it's a resistance based on fear of whatever you think would happen if you go forward, which
Correct.
everything that Monique was saying today is perfectly resolving that issue by the fact of following the universal signs and flows. So you never actually have to do something.
Right. And oh my gosh, and it's so much freedom. Like my number one value is freedom. And I want to also help the women entrepreneurs out there who want to make an impact in the world feel that freedom, right? If we're not doing it for our freedom, why are we doing it, right?
Exactly.
And I am such a firm believer in health and well-being and being proactive, um, and and understanding that our energy is tied to illness. It really is. And so what you were saying is spot on. Many times and most of the time, when we are sick, it's because we have to look at our energy. What are we saying to ourselves? It could be conscious or subconscious, because that's causing us to feel a certain way. And it's causing us to either do something or not do something, or how we do it, right? And we give away a lot of our power in that way. So
Yeah, and being able to maintain one's power no matter what, I think is part of the self-mastery.
yes,
Because when we reactive to the world, we're not maintaining the power. And when we're intentional with what we're choosing to do while open and listening, just like you were saying, that's when we really have our power shining through. And since we're here to serve, like that's
yeah,
kind of the purpose of everything, that becomes a natural being in flow
yes,
aspect that I think everybody's chasing. Like, how do I get in flow? That's how.
yes, yes. And going back to the health, we do have to recognize that we are in human bodies, and we're going to have the human issues. And because I'm sure most of the women that are watching are in that maybe perimenopause, menopausal stage, you know, like me, I found that once I took action in supporting myself in that way, in the things that my body needed, I was able to start sleeping better, regaining most of my energy, feeling like I was whole again. Right. So, as women entrepreneurs, we really do have to put, I would say our spirituality and our health and physical well-being top priority, because we're not going to be there. We're not going to be there whole for ourselves, and we won't be there whole for our clients, for our children, for our partners. And health is very, very important as
Yeah,
well.
and I always remind people that superpowers and self-care, they kind of go hand in hand. Like you can't
Yes.
really have your superpowers fully active out there in the world if you're not taking care of yourself, because then you're not running on the universal energy. Would you agree?
I completely agree. Completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And listen, we're going to have bad days. I have days where
Yeah.
I'm stubborn and I ignore everything that I know. But I feel it. I feel it, and I give myself a timeout, because I want to make sure that if I'm feeling that way, negative, self-sabotaging, my energy's off, I'm not going to serve myself and I'm not going to serve anybody today. So it's actually better for me not to try to do any work that day and just take time for myself and get back into equilibrium. And then I feel like, I have the whole world ahead of me.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think that's a very good point that a lot of you here need to hear is that if you mess up, which we all do, it doesn't mean that's it. You sabotaged your creation
right.
and that's like the end. Oh my God, bad day. It's like I had
Yeah.
negative intentions or something today. No, you
Yes.
can have that, but your job is to be aware and then how you're going to handle it. So Monique just explained a very good way of handling it. Like if you're realizing that that happens, then choose not to go do certain things because, okay, today you can't seem to shift your energy. Just have a day when you don't do then certain things.
Right.
Like my approach is more because I'm probably more electric than you, like I'm more forward. I would still do something, but I would be very conscious as to parameters, like not let
Yes.
myself spill out. And then
Yes.
next day, I will make sure I do nothing. Like I would
Yes.
reset. So that's kind
Yes.
of my way. And there is no right or wrong way, but you do
No.
have to handle if you are having that. And as long as you do, it doesn't sabotage your creation.
No, it doesn't. I've noticed that the women who are out of balance, very overwhelmed, very stressed, whether they work for themselves or they're in corporations or what have you, is they're not listening to the signs of their body. They're not, and they just keep going and going and going and going. And again, I was in that state. I will share that one of the aha moments that I had was I was working my 9 to 5, and then I started a side hustle that really wasn't aligned. Back then, I knew it. The voice told me this is not the way to go. I ignored it.
Mm.
And I kept working that business, two businesses at the same time for 2.5 years. My family suffered, I suffered, and I was so exhausted and malnutritioned that I actually fell asleep driving and crashed. And that was one of the biggest aha moments that I had. And the very next day, I shut down that second business.
Yeah, you must have been watched over by the universe to say, okay, it's going to be a tough lesson, girl, but we're going to make sure you're okay, but learn.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that is it. And I share that story because we don't want to always wait for the universe to give us the lesson,
yeah.
right? We want to recognize it ahead of time and be so in tune with ourselves and hearing that voice of what is for us, what isn't for us now or later, that we are able to avoid, those circumstances that could be very painful.
Oh, so true. So true. So now that we are coming to the end of this conversation, which I could talk to you for the next
I
hour
know.
because I'm sure we can find tons of things to talk about. Let's look a little bit into Feng Shui and how that
Yeah.
connects to the business. And I know you have the free gift for our audience that's related to that. So
Yes,
just kind of
yes.
like
So
explain to them what that does for what they're
mhm.
doing in their business
Yeah.
life.
The easy way to explain feng shui is that it is energy. You know, feng shui is energy, and the energy in our spaces reflect the energies in our body and the physical things that we manifest in our life, right? So if we are creators and we want to create something beautiful in our physical world, like six-figure career, you know, whatever it is that you want to manifest, we have to look at the energy in our spaces and the energy inside of us. And feng shui helps us to manipulate that energy and free the energy so it can flow. So my flow roadmap, the wisdom contained behind the flow roadmap is feng shui astrology and feng shui. Okay, so these kind of both go hand in hand. And so I like to teach about feng shui and help people practice it because it's another way to find deeper flow in our life and deeper trust and surrender, and just to experience the beauty and sacredness of the energy around us. A 3-day feng shui challenge. Each day, we're going to focus on one area of life and one area of our space in our home. And we're going to make that connection. And so, day one, I'm going to be teaching you simple ways of doing feng shui to revitalize the health area of your home and your life. The second day, I'm going to help you revitalize love and partnership. And the third day, wealth and abundance, because you know these are all the three things that we're after in life, all these three things. I would love for you to participate in it, so just sign up for free, get all 3 days with worksheets. You can ask me any questions. I'll be there to support along the way.
Oh, this is such a great gift. So, yes, for all of you who want to revitalize your health, relationships, and abundance utilizing Feng Shui, there is this three-part challenge that Monique has for you. The link is in the show notes. Definitely go check it out. I think it would be super beneficial for you to play with that. And maybe if you're new to Feng Shui, learn a little bit about how that specific energetic structure can work for your space. And check out everything about Monique Renee in her fiercelyflowing.com. That's her
Yes,
website. And all her links are in the show notes. So thank you so much, Monique, for being here. This has been such a fun conversation.
it has. I've loved it so much. Thank you, Eugenia, for the space, and I look forward to connecting again soon.
Oh, thank you.